Welcome back to another episode of the A-10 Insider Podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Dawson. The gentleman you see sitting next to me is Jeff Goodman. I am proud of Jeff because he finally cleaned off his kitchen counter. There's no empty Diet Coke boxes over there. There's no empty Blue Moon bottles. It's nice that he finally realized people can actually see into the kitchen in his house in Charleston. You're going to hear that about 17 times on this podcast, by the way, that he is, in fact, in Charleston. Jeff. It was a wild week in Atlantic 10 basketball. We got a lot to talk about here. Richmond 3-1. They won at Davidson. There was a really important result in Chaffetz Arena on Wednesday night. St. Louis beat George Mason by a point thanks to a last-second free throw. And VCU is now 3-1 after winning at Loyola Chicago. But to me, the story of this league right now is the same story that it was last time you heard from us. That is the Dayton Flyers. They're 4-0. Deron Holmes, our guest last week, had 32 points. They went into the Bronx and beat up on Fordham by 24 points, a team that's been pretty good in Fordham. So these Flyers, man, that's the story of the league right now at this point, right?
Yeah, and obviously when they get their backcourt back, how much better can they be? They're already looking like they're a step ahead of everybody else, and they're without their starting guards. When they get those two back, boy, I mean, again, they may hit their stride at the right time. And who knows? I mean, again, we kind of ruled out any chance for an at-large. But what if they run the table in the A-10 regular season? Is that possible? You know, it's unlikely. But if they did run the table, you would have to put them back in the equation because you're looking at some other teams around the country. You know, I'm doing a top 25 almost every night. And at the back end of the top 25, you know, I have teams right now like Charleston, like FAU, you know, teams, Auburn is in the mix, Memphis is in the mix, and they don't have real good resume wins. So I think Dayton can make up ground here, but again, you can't have a slip.
Here's the problem. They have no quad 1 wins. They have no quad 2 wins. They're 0-5 against the top 2 quadrants. They don't have really a bad loss. Like their worst loss is what, BYU on a neutral in overtime, right? Without certain guard. Like they don't have a bad loss. The issue is, are they going to be able to find a way to get some quality wins? Not even enough. Like you need something. And winning at VCU this year, that is a quad 2 win. Winning at St. Louis, that will end up being a quad 1 win. So to me, what it comes down to is you need VCU to make a run. You need St. Louis to make a run, and you need to win those road games. I think that's what it will come down to, is you need VCU to be a top 75 team in the net. You need St. Louis to
got to just run the table.
Yeah.
I mean, you honestly got to probably.
Like, I don't even know if it's necessarily running the table. Like, I think you can withstand like 1 or 2 losses, but you can't lose to somebody that's not St. Louis, and you lose to somebody that's not VCU. It's just that is what it is. And I was looking at the wrong number. St. Louis is actually 95 in the net. So both of those wins on the road right now would be quad 2 wins. And that's kind of where you run into it a little bit with them. Speaking of St. Louis, they picked up a really important win in terms of the A-10 regular season race. They beat George Mason at home by a point, free throw with the second left, like I mentioned. So they're now 3-1 in the league. They haven't had a great start to the season, and they've already lost at UMass. But that team has as much talent as anybody in the league. That team is as dangerous as anybody in the league. And if they actually decide to start playing some defense, then, you know, they have a chance to really make a lot of noise. We have a special guest on the A-10 Insider Podcast. That's Mrs. Goodman, the queen of Charleston. The biggest win of Wednesday night was St. Louis hosting George Mason. They beat him by a point. It was a free throw with a second left. That matters a lot in the A-10 regular season standings for a couple of reasons. One, if George Mason had won that game, they would have been 3-1, tied for second place in the league with Richmond and VCU. But St. Louis won, and now we're looking at a team that I think you can make the argument, if Dayton doesn't have their starting guards, St. Louis is probably the most talented team in the league. Now, they don't really guard. They got to figure out how to get some stops. Things are not working perfectly there.
Well, they held Mason of 62.
Yeah, well, that's a dangerous team if they find a way to get it going. And they are 1 game out of first place right now with 2 games left against Dayton this season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we all thought St. Louis and Dayton were going to be the cream of the crop in the league, and both going to have a chance to be at large teams. Dayton, you can make excuses for, again, the injuries. St. Louis, you really can't. I mean, for the most part, they've had their team. So you just wonder if it took some time for Travis Ford with the expectations, and the biggest worry was obviously on the defensive end. Could he get this team to really guard? And again, I think those two are probably at the end of the day going to be 1 and 2. I wouldn't discount the guy we're having on the pod today, and VCU's Mike Rhoades. And I'll tell you what, a team that had a hell of a week this week was Richmond and Chris Mooney. And he's done it with a completely different team than the one that had that cool NCAA tournament run last year. But they do have Tyler Burton back, and he's been awesome this year.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, you play a style that's kind of tough to deal with if you're Richmond, and 99% of the time you're gonna have the best player on the floor in Tyler Burton, and that's a good combination of things.
We got to get Tyler Burton on. By the way, we are not going through this season without getting my fellow masshole, and he's not a masshole. He's actually a good dude. I'm a masshole. Tyler Burton is a good.
You're Charleston hole at this point, man.
I might be.
You're not even Boston anymore.
We got to get Tyler Burton on this pod.
We'll get Tyler Burton on the pod. Okay. We'll get Tyler Burton on the pod. All right. So you mentioned VCU. We do have Mike Rhoades coming up here in just a minute. One of my favorite stories out of the A-10 this season is Ace Baldwin, and we talk about Rhoades with this, but this dude.
It's a great story. You've got to stick around for this. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he broke his wrist in high school, tore off the calf.
Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
It just that there's nothing that makes more sense than a dude that's wired like Ace Baldwin playing for a guy that coached through getting his teeth knocked out because he wanted to get into a practice with his team as a 36-year-old. Like it's the perfect marriage of player and coach, Mike Rhoades and Ace Baldwin. They're both nuts.
They are nuts, and again. You're going to want to stick around, and let's just go to it now. Let's go to Mike Rhoades, VCU head coach, on the A-10 Insider Pod.
And now let me welcome on to the A-10 Insider Podcast, VCU head coach Mike Rhoades. The Rams are on a 2-game winning streak, and they won 7 of their last 8 games, currently in second place in the Atlantic 10. Rhoades, what's going on, man? How you doing? Good to see you.
All good, man. Good morning, fellas. Thanks for having me.
You look like, by the way, you look like you're bundled up. Is it like 40 degrees in Richmond today?
It's just the gear. It's just the gear, Jeff. No, it's a little cold today, but it's not your cold, that's for sure.
Hey, he's in Charleston, man. This guy hasn't actually worked in like 4 weeks.
Man,
that's not true. That is not true. I'm working from Charleston. Where would you rather work from? 70 degrees, which is what it is today in Charleston, or probably 28 degrees in Boston. I'm smarter than Doster. That's what it comes down to.
And you're undefeated, right? You haven't lost a game all year.
Exactly.
All right, Rhoades, I mentioned it at the open. You guys have won 7 of your last 8 games, playing some of the best basketball you've played this season. What's kind of changed? How have you gotten into this rhythm?
Well, we're healthier for sure. Having Ace back, he broke his wrist and then sprained his other wrist, and he's back. No, I'm not going to say he's 100, but he's closer to 100. That's he's the head of our snake for sure. And look, we have 7 new guys this year, and I don't care what anyone says. Even with transfers from the portal, they still have new roles and have to figure this out. And we're just starting to come together, and guys understand their roles and being a lot more comfortable. And I think we're scoring the ball a lot easier. I should say a lot better, not easier, but better. So it's coming together for sure.
So with Ace, he breaks his wrist earlier this year. He's only out, I don't know how many days, not a lot. How tough is this dude, Mike? You're known for your toughness.
Yeah,
how tough is this dude?
Honestly, he's probably the toughest kid I've ever coached, I've ever been around. Wow. He should be. I mean, I say he'd be one hell of a cornerback. He's just winning to him is the most important thing in his life. Like, it's crazy, but some people, I got to get here, I got to get there, I got to get these numbers. To Ace, all he cares about is he wants to make sure his team wins. And that's where that toughness comes from. It's pretty special. I say it all the time. He's just like a lot of college kids, good days and bads, moody, tired, this and that. We've all been there. But the one thing, when it's time to compete and you're keeping score from a shooting drill to a game on a Friday night, he wants to win, and I'm glad I have him.
So the way that I heard is that when he broke his wrist against Morgan State, one, that was the second time he had that injury. He broke his wrist in high school, and then he tried to play through it. And then when he did it again with you guys, he tried to play through it again. He didn't want to get the surgery. Is that true?
Yeah, exactly. He broke it in high school, same exact thing, got a cast, never got surgery, got a cast on it, cut the cast off to play. And then, of course, he did it against Morgan State early in the game and played the whole game with it. I knew something was wrong the way he was holding his hand. And I asked him, he goes, "I'll be all right, coach." And the next day, there's too much pain. And when he got 2 screws in it, if you see the x-rays, like, they're not little screws. Like, it's crazy. And honestly, within 4 days after the surgery, he was like, "I'm good, coach. I'm good." and I had to get his mom on a Zoom and explain to him, like, for your future, you need to get this surgery. "No, coach, I think I'll be all right." No, you're gonna get this. This is what we're gonna do. And I said, if this was my son, I'm telling you, you're getting surgery. And then when the doctor says you're good, you're good. I said, I'm not worried about the games. I'm worried about your health. And he's like, "Oh, I'll be back sooner than that." To him now, I think they said 2 weeks was the first time they'll look at it. And to adults, 14 days is 2 weeks. He goes, that's 10 days. That's 10 days. Like, he was trying to find every way. So he was going 5 business days. That's what I said. So he just wanted to get back, and as soon as he got back, he played against Vandy and had 28, and like, just a whole different team. And you have players that tell the team where to go and how to go, and he's that guy.
Yeah, it's refreshing. There just aren't a lot of those dudes anymore. There were back when you played, and probably even when you coached at Randolph-Macon, and that brings me to my next question. So I'm driving down to Charleston, and we stop because my bladder isn't what it used to be, so I'm stopping way too much on the drive down, and tough weather and everything, and pull over, and sure enough, I'm at Randolph-Macon.
And boy,
first thing I thought about was you. I mean, obviously, I think you're the only one I know, like, I associate with Randolph-Macon. Give me kind of your favorite memory, and just kind of what it was like to coach at that level, because it is completely different than coaching, maybe not Ace Baldwin, but most kids, and where you're at now.
Well, 2 things. The players that I had in my 13 years, 3 years as assistant for Hal Nunley, and then 10 years as a head coach. I got the head job at 25. Sean McAloon, who's the head coach at IMG, he was 22. He was my assistant. That was our staff. So the first year, I had 12 freshmen. Jamal Brunn, who's one of my assistants now, was my point guard from Baltimore, another Baltimore point guard. I had 12 freshmen on the team. We had 19 guys on the team. And my wife and I, Jody, we were engaged at the time. We just said, we're going to make this our family. Like, it's just not going to be the job. We're going to make this our life. And that was the best decision we've ever had. And I felt like that's the way I'm going to coach. If I ever coach, and how long I coach, we're going to make it bigger than just the team and the game. So that was number one. But probably my favorite memory, Jeff, ever was my 4th year, Jamal's senior year. We were 28-2. Hampton Sydney, Tony Shaver was there. We had unbelievable battles. We were always in the finals together. That year, we were number 1 in the country. They were number 2 on our senior day. But we won the league championship, and we're driving back on the bus over Afton Mountain on 81 and 64. And I'm sitting in the back of the bus with the players. And, I was still a young guy, and the relating is easier then than it is probably now. But just like feeling a part of something that's bigger than ourselves. I had so much fun there. We won a lot, but we had great kids, and now watching some of these guys now just in coaching and whatever they are. So that's what's really cool. But I was cutting my teeth. Now everything I do now is because of that time there. Being a Division III coach, as you guys know, you do everything. from washing the uniforms to doing the budget to scheduling travel and meals, walking into admissions and trying to sell a student, like all that stuff. That just prepped me for this. And that I always said it was
Mike.
like,
I know you're not washing the uniforms anymore, but you, the core of you, and listen, there's a lot of guys that have changed that I've seen, when they broke in and when they start to get bigger jobs and win games at a high level that have changed. I will say this, you have not changed one bit in who you are and what you stand for. And I think that is probably one of the best things anybody could say about you, right? Like,
I appreciate that. Honestly, I like who I was, and I like who I am now, and how we do things.
Does your wife?
But
your wife still like who you are?
I don't know, 20 pounds ago maybe, but but I say this all the time, man. I say it all the time. Like, it's still basketball. Like, we got in this. Like, people always say, Coach, why did you get into coaching? Because I couldn't play anymore, and I couldn't play anymore, and I wanted to stay in the gym. And man, I love basketball. I love being around basketball players. I love getting prepared for games. I love going on the road and recruiting and seeing who you're recruiting against and say, hey, can you get this kid? Like, I think that stuff's fun. And so here I am, 28th year now, and it's still fun to me. Now, the stakes are higher, this and that, however anybody wants to put it when you move up levels and all that stuff. Yeah, but I'll tell you one thing, man. On a Saturday afternoon in February or early March, when we were playing Hampton City and Duke and Carolina were playing that day, I didn't give a damn who won that game. Yeah. And we had a lot of people, like, I just always say that, like, when you're in the gym and the ball goes up, that's what's great about this. So that probably is one reason why I've always sort of kept my feet on the ground, is I just love to be in the gym. I love the basketball part. I love being around people that love the game like I do, and our staff does, and our team does. So that's the fun of it, man.
I do want to push back on one thing, because I played Division III basketball, and you mentioned planning out meals. Like, did you guys have meals that was more than like $7.50 per diem going to Subway and getting the $5 foot long?
Man, we were great at finding those value meals and those the 2-for-1 deals. We were great at that. I will say though, very quickly in my start at Randolph-Macon, I got in with the people at Jersey Mike's right off that exit. Jeff, you might have stopped there and had a big sub, but
I saw it.
I got in with those people early, and the guys thought I was magic, because we would have some great Jersey subs and even some hot ones, man. But no, the meals were crazy. The cafeteria guy, Bob Gordon was his name, a buddy of mine. He took care of our team when it was home, but you find different ways to be creative, very creative.
That kind of stuff, I think, is why, especially at that level, like, the teams end up being so close, because those are just memories that are never gonna, like, you can't make those anywhere else. You can't, when you're sitting there trying to say, like, all right, look, I got $7.50. I'm gonna have 50 cents left over. If we pool all of our 50 cents left over, then we can go get a cookie for everybody on the team, right? There's that's not, you can't replicate that anywhere else in sports. And that's why, I always advocate for D3 hoops, probably more than
Jamal Brunt was our senior captain. The last 2 years, he was our captain. His work study job was to close the gym at night and change the laundry. That was his work study job, so he can keep going to school. Mm-hmm. He was our starting point guard. And like, there's lots of stories like that. Guys coming in, getting work study, and they're in charge of doing the lines of football games and the chains, and and the whole team is setting up a volleyball for a game, and then working it, like, just different things like that. I just think we don't have that at this level. Like, man, no one would do that, right? There's no need to do that. But back then, you had to find a way to, and you did it among your teammates, without a doubt. I mean, the jobs that I had at Lebanon Valley with my teammates, just to get a couple extra bucks, but we were all in it together. Right after practice, we'd go to another game, or we'd go to the event. Or I was a terrible intramural ref, but it was $8 a game. I did 3 games.
That's right.
And like, hey, and we also know you needed weekend money too, and we found different ways to do it.
Hey, I got one for you, Rhodes. So we took an overseas trip to Ireland before my senior year, after my junior year, and to pay for it, we set up the system where you could hire the basketball players to come in for $10 an hour and do whatever odd job you needed for people in the community. And this one woman needed like her backyard cleaned up, and we're like, oh, that's fine. There's probably just a dog or something there, and we show up, and it's like half an acre of woods with about 2 inches of standing water that had just been a dumping ground for like all the kids that were just partying, right? So it's nothing but like 25-year-old beer cans in there. And it took us like 6 hours in 30-degree weather, walking through with like our like boots on that are soaking wet, like they're waterproof, but that at that point, like, by the time you're done, like your socks are soaking wet, all for like a measly $60 to try to pay for this trip to Ireland.
But look at all these years later, that's one of your memories with your boys. And we all have them, college. That's what it's all about. That's the fun of it.
Have Doster cleaning toilets is what they would.
Hey, look, I would have rather clean toilets than be out there in the mud picking up that mess. I'll tell you that much. All right, let's pivot, Rhodes, because I do want to ask you this. You guys have a couple of players in the NBA right now. Bones Highland obviously is having a really good start to his career. Vince Williams was with the Grizzlies. I'm not sure if he's still up with them, but he was a second-round draft pick. Now that you are starting to get guys to the next level, are you seeing, more doors open up with recruiting? Is that something where all of a sudden, like the VCU brand is a little bit bigger? Like, what does that do to kind of help the program big picture?
Well, it definitely, when you're talking to some recruits and they say, Bones Highland's my favorite player, for sure, that helps, that opens doors. So yeah, that has helped. VCU's had that brand for a long time, well before I got here. I think our style of play and our development of how guys have really improved while they're here, I think that really helps it when they narrow down their thinking. But I always felt like we could get in the door. It doesn't mean we're gonna get the guy, but I always feel like we can get in, and our staff's been around for a while, so there's great relationships with high school coaches, AAU coaches, people out there. So that part, the NBA thing helps just because, guys, that's everyone's goal. And we could, my big thing is I have a plan for you. If you come here, here's our plan for you. Now you got to follow the plan. You got to work the plan. But, we've had a plan with some of our other guys, and look at where they're at. So, that I think helps and intrigues people. Now, the toughest thing to me right now in recruiting is name, image, and likeness.
That's where I was going to ask you next.
Yeah, I have no problem to say it. I say it all the time. That's an issue. That's a problem. Now there's that component of it that we're just not going to compete with certain schools on how they do things, and that's going to hurt us. That has already hurt us. But then we got to go find guys that want to come here for all the right reasons. Our guys have done pretty well in NIL around here. We've had a lot of businesses in the Richmond area help our guys, but we're not doing what other schools are doing when it comes to that stuff, and saying, here's what you're going to make, this and that, because if that doesn't happen, then I'm a liar, and I'm not going there.
Is it more when you're competing, because you guys have won some battles against Power 6 schools over the years? Is that where it's hurting you more than anything? Is it, you're able to, I would assume, compete against most schools in your league at your level, but when you're trying to beat a kid for against some of those Power 5, Power 6 schools, is that where it's coming into play?
Without a doubt. I mean, the example was we're recruiting some guys this summer, and they're doing very well, and Power 5 schools come in, and the conversation now completely changes. And Coach Nunley, who I worked for, money talks, bullshit walks. And the reality of it is that the NIL creates that, and it is what it is. And we'll still compete against that and fight against that. And because of I believe in relationships that, Ace Baldwin wanted to come play for us and for me, and there's still guys out there that are going to be like that, but it's less and less because, look, one thing I learned about this is somebody that has an opportunity that can make money and they've never had money before. I can't blame them. We can't blame them. Who says that they're wrong? The way the way NIL has changed recruiting in a drop of a hat is pretty intense and pretty incredible, but it's here to stay. It is what it is.
I don't know how much you've gotten a chance to see Shaka at Marquette this season, but it's been interesting to me because they've kind of gone from being a team that was known for defense, and then they'll kind of figure it out at the other end of the floor, like the complete opposite end of the spectrum. They're getting up and down, they're spacing everything out, they're shooting a ton of threes. They don't really have a 5-man, like they're playing one of those kind of 5-out. The guy's name is Oso Ighodaro. He's a great passer at the 5. But they've kind of gone to, all right, we're going to try to score 80 on you. And if we get a stop, great. If not, then we're going to go hit a 3 at the other end. 3 is greater than 2. Did you ever think you'd see Shaka Smart becoming one of these guys that is kind of like, yeah, you know what? We're going to try to score first and then figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, just being around him, I mean, he loves offense, but now, Shaka is one of the smartest people I've ever been around. He understands his environment better than anyone and he's not afraid to change. And you saw that at VCU. Then we played differently at Texas. Now they're playing different at Marquette. That's number one is intelligence. And number two is confidence in himself that, hey, you got to change sometimes. You got to be different than what you have been. Some people don't do that. When we, people don't realize this, but when we first got to VCU, we weren't the greatest defensive team. Mm-hmm. We had a Joey Rod and those guys. We had to outscore people, and we did. In that second year, of course, we caught fire because we made a ton of threes in the NCAA tournament. We didn't press as much and trap. We did at times, but nothing like 2012, 13, and on. Then that's where the havoc approach really took off, and defense created offense. Goes to Texas, plays different type of kids he has, bigger, slower guys. You see him just change again here. Marquette, I watched their second half yesterday, and they were moving that ball so well yesterday and getting any shot they wanted against a really good defensive team. And just says he's capable. Coaches, you can change if you want. It's not always comfortable and easy. He can do that. He can do that. They got some guys that make plays. When you have big guys that are versatile, you could play a lot of different ways, and he has that.
Hey, so Doster's trying right now to find us a house down in Houston for the Final Four. Because we got 10 guys coming from Field of 68, Tyler Hansbrough, John Henson, me, Doster. Do you have any connections from your Rice days? Can you help us out here with an Airbnb or something?
I lived on Pine Street in Bel Air, and you could go look at Bel Air. It's close to everywhere. There's a lot of great places to eat, a lot of good neighbors. That's where I'll be. I'll be on Pine Street in Bel Air with my old neighbors. It's a cool place. Cool place. If you can't, there's a hotel by Rice called the Zaza. That's where you need to stay.
The Zaza.
It
sounds like it's probably a little too high class for Doster.
Yeah. I'm more of a Red Roof Inn, Ramada kind of a guy.
Good luck with that, brother. Good luck.
Oh, man. Well, listen, great catching up with you, man. Really good. Always enjoy our chats, even though you bailed on us. A-10 the night before media day. I'm not going to forget this. We were going out, Doster and I. You were coming in. It was not that late, but I know you need your beauty sleep before the A-10 media day.
I need a lot of beauty sleep, Jeff. I tell you this. I have no problem to tell the world this. If I'm gonna have a night out, it's in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. That's where I get my free pass. I only get 1 or 2 a year. If I have a night out, I'm going back to Pennsylvania.
All right,
real's real.
we'll meet you there next time.
You got it.
I was gonna say I better get an invite, man. Come on, I'm not that far away.
Right to the Yingling Brewery.
There we go. All right, Rhoades. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate everything you do. Thanks so much.
Always. We'll see you soon.